Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is time to start the fourth Responsible Travel and Tourism Forum webinar for 2013. I'm your host, Andrea Dixon. I want to welcome everybody to our Responsible Travel and Tourism community. For those of you who are new, RTTF is a forum designed to educate and promote responsible tourism learning. I want to mention right now that the nominations for the RTTF Leadership Awards are open. There's 3 categories. The first category is the RTTF Leadership Award, which includes tour operators, accommodations, and destinations. The second category is for a travel agent or travel agencies, while the final category is a Student Leadership Award. We encourage everybody who's listening to see if your organization or any organization person you know qualifies for an award by going to our website at rttf.ca and choose the Leadership Awards tab. So they are open till December 6th, and go look at the qualification and nominate those companies and organizations and people that you think are leaders in the sustainability field. Now, these awards and all our webinars are sponsored by Baxter Travel Media, Air Canada, Eton Chelsea, and the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University. These organizations are TTF sponsors, believe in the principles of sustainable tourism, and support it by giving time and money. So thank you so much to our sponsors. I also want to thank our speakers. They've taken time out of their regular workday responsibilities to share their knowledge. So thank you so much. And of course, to all our participants. Now, here's our webinar series outline. And can you believe our first 3 webinars are done and they're archived at rttf.ca, so you can go and listen. You can still sign up for the last 2 webinars, and please note the next webinar, webinar 5, is next week. It's only a week away, a week today. And webinar 5 will be all about risk in travel. It's a huge topic that seems to dominate the news so much these days. It'll focus on what you as an agent need to do for your client and yourself when a situation becomes chaotic and unpredictable when your clients are traveling. Then we will have a webinar on a niche that is growing exponentially, accessible tourism. Dr. Ted Manning is developing criteria for accessible tourism, and he'll be here to share his knowledge. And also joining Ted during that webinar is Isabelle Ducharme from Carreau. Carreau is an organization whose mission it is to make tourism and culture more accessible for people with limited physical abilities. But back to today, the goal of today's webinar is to go beyond recycling programs. How do you green your front and back operations? We have some case studies, a toolkit, and tips to get you started. And who do we have here joining us today? Our first speaker is Julie Klein. Julie is joining us from Colorado. She has extensive environmental accountability experience, and I think accountability is a key word with green policies. Recently, she started her own company, Confluent Sustainability, which allows her to combine her personal passions and professional interests. Prior to starting her own company, Julie was the Director of Environmental Affairs for Rock Resorts and Vail Resorts, a division of Vail Resorts, where she led their sustainability programs. We're thrilled today that Julie has agreed to share her wealth of knowledge with RTTF. Our second speaker is calling us today from Toronto. Paul Garding wears 2 hats for Delta Hotels. He's the leader of the brand operations team, responsible for overseeing key operations and the delivery of the Delta brand to guests, so that's room standards and programs, purchasing, and other responsibilities. But really dear to our hearts today, he is the environmental officer for Delta Hotels and Resorts. He has been with Delta for years, and his career has evolved as Delta has grown. So I just want to say how great it is that these 2 leaders can make time to join us today. And as usual, their full bios are online at rttf.ca. I will be moderating the webinar. Both Julie and Paul will speak for about 20 minutes. And then with the transition time between speakers, we'll aim to have our Q&A session for around 1:50. And regarding questions, please type your questions, and lots of questions. We love them. If you can say who they're for, that makes it even easier for me. But you can type them at any time during the webinar. We'll be watching that chat box, and I'll be compiling all the questions. So Julie, I think that's all I need to cover, so I will pass the mic over to you.
Hi, Julie. Before you
Did we lose Julie?
Okay, Julie, begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today, and I look forward to sharing some background about some of my experiences in sustainable tourism, as well as specific to travel operations, as well as core hotel and facility operations. So please, load up your questions, and I look forward to answering them at the end. So I wanted to review some statistics and some information about trends that you may have seen in other parts of the series as well as in other documentation that you've looked at, but I think it's still pretty compelling, and I think we're starting to see a lot more what I would call sell-through on the feedback and comments that we get from travelers and folks like yourself that are organizing and booking travel for your clients. For a long time, it was the right thing to do, and now it continues to make good business sense. And I think that that continues to be more and more true. And I think, as you'll hear from Paul, the return on investment that businesses are seeing, not only from customer loyalty, but also from the economics of really integrating sustainability in their practices. I think the trends that are really emerging, not only in travel and tourism, but overall sustainability, is that innovation through sustainability is really starting to differentiate brands. And we're going to continue to see more and more of that as the global economy rebuilds, and certainly the economy in North America. Sustainability has not lost favor, and as things emerge, this is how businesses are really distinguishing themselves. And as part of that, it's empowering consumers to help lead those choices, as well as engaging all of what you would call your stakeholders. It's everything from your employees to the members of your community to your vendors and suppliers, and of course to your customers. And I think it's really important to try to figure out ways in your sustainability practices to connect and resonate with them. And what really was discovered and really revealed in the last year or so is that as the Rio Plus 20 conference convened last summer in Europe, that policymakers, at least in the United States and I think globally, are having a tough time enacting and making real sweeping changes relative to sustainability. And so business is going to have to do this. Business is going to have to lead. And what we're really seeing, and I think that, again, Paul will illustrate some of this as well, and you'll see this in some of the other information, is that it's about integrating it into your business as usual. And it's reporting it in your financials. It's really tying sustainability into all aspects of your business and really increasing transparency. And as the consuming public gets more sophisticated about what sustainability really means, this is going to become even more important, that people are going to want to know that you're walking your talk, per se. And the way that really organizations are going to lead and continue to move forward is by really looking at partnerships, not only looking at their supply chain, but also partnerships of their supply chain, not only in networking, but also in supply chain of goods and supplies that they're getting for offering their services. And it's a way that it's dynamic. It shares the burden as well as the benefits, and really scales up the benefit of sustainability. So when you get into a little bit more into tourism, as Andrea mentioned, she called it beyond recycling. I call it beyond towels. I think it wasn't too many years ago in any level of accommodations you would see. You wouldn't see necessarily a towel and linen reuse program. They're now an expectation, and an expectation where the consuming public really wants people to do that well. And the consuming public is engaged and participating in these programs, and we still as operators, and I say we because I work a lot with hotel operations, really now need to make sure that these programs are solid and well executed. And in keeping with that, our other, operational efficiencies. It's going beyond regulations and beyond, things that are expected as businesses to just simply be good stewards. Beyond making sure the chemicals are managed properly and they're not pouring things down the drain and all sorts of different things like that, and really going for efficiency with good quality lighting, water conservation, all these various things, and measuring those things, not only in a carbon platform, mitigating carbon, but also in verifying it to third-party certification and verification and criteria. I think that that's not only going to be the case in the non-tourism space, but certainly in the tourism space, because it's hard to know when you're shopping for a travel product to know what's the best of the best, what's the gold standard, and more, again, the public is going to be expecting people to look for third-party verification to really stamp and verify that the work that they're doing is true and transparent and truly credible. And I think that that is something that many of you in the travel and tourism professional, especially from a booking perspective are going to want to be able to, wade through that information and provide that quality criteria and information to your clients so that they're going to know that they're not only picking a great service provider, a great quality product, but they're also looking at those elevated commitments to sustainability, and it's very helpful to have it put in front of you in a very clear and well-articulated manner. So some of the other trends that are coming into play, and again, a lot of these dovetail into general consumer products. When you look at things like sustainable cuisine, the buzz certainly in the area that I live in is, farm to table, artisan, local, regional, seasonal, really connecting visitors to authentic food and other experiences that really bring together their travel experience. And that is only going to increase, especially when people are looking at health and wellness and authenticity and all of those things to really bring together what is more categorized as experiential travel. And it bridges further even to things like agritourism, where people are going to certain locations and actually getting involved in whether it's vineyards or actually maybe even doing a little bit of labor at a local organic farm, and really then also capturing what's unique and iconic about the heritage and history of the areas that they're visiting. There are many people that are traveling less, and so they really want more from their travel experience, and they want their normal amenities that they're looking for, but they also want an enriched and enlightened experience. And so looking at all these different connection points and touch points that really enhance their experience is really about sustainability. It's about the sustainability of the tourism product in itself and the destination, but it's also about the sustainability long-term of managing those resources. And so I think all those things connect together, and the good news is that it also then helps businesses differentiate and really move the needle on their commitments because they're seeing the consuming public really respond to that. And then, of course, I know this is the case more globally than just in the United States, is sustainable building and operational efficiency. All those things are going to be really important, but I think that those are the things that are going to be, again, the expectation, where it's the things that should be seamless to the guest experience, but that they know that they're staying someplace that at a resort or an accommodation, or they're traveling on an airline that is just taking care of business and they're doing things well, and you don't have to care about it, but you can feel really good that you're giving business to a company that has stewardship values. So again, some statistical stuff that we see a lot of this, and again, I think that there's still some skepticism, to be perfectly honest, of whether or not this truly is the case. Like, will 70% of travelers really pay, up to 10% more for a green hotel? What I've started to see, and I think a lot of people are starting to see, is one is an expectation that you're going to be a better steward as a hotel or tourism service operator, but that all things being equal, amenities, all other services, that travelers will pick a more sustainable or greener provider, hotel, airline, cruise company, whatever, if those things are all in place, if all things are being equal. And I think that it's really important to know that, and I think that will continue to be a growing expectation. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier, and I will probably mention again, is certification. Again, that third-party verification is increasingly becoming important for, again, the public to really understand and cut through the noise of who's good and who isn't. And by going to validated and verified third-party sources to certify, that makes all the difference. And there's a lot happening globally to really kind of standardize what that looks like, to make sure that things are really clear and transparent. So customer expectations and choices, I've kind of touched on them a little bit. I think we all know that travelers are pretty loyal to brands, and they will sometimes choose amenities over environmental attributes. But again, as companies like Delta Hotels and other companies put together seamless experiences where they're just taking care of the efficiency of their operations, which not only puts money in their pocket, but makes their facilities more comfortable and run more efficiently. Those things are being taken convenience doesn't have to rule over conservation, that people don't feel like they have to make sacrifices. The traveling public will always want the ability to opt in or out of programs, and I think it's real important to offer sustainability as an option in all aspects of travel and tourism, as well as all aspects of consumer products, but always give somebody a choice. If somebody chooses the more information we can give them, the more options we can give them, then they can make that choice at least thoughtfully. The other thing that I think is very, very important, and I think is very, probably very true in the world that most of you are living in, is that the booking engines and the other more common consumer-facing sources for not only just booking travel, but also just researching travel are really in the sustainability space. They're coming up with some of their own verification, their own certifications, and the public is watching how they communicate this. And I think it's real important from the more traditional booking and travel planning networks like the world that most of you live in, is to keep up with that, to understand what works and what will resonate with your client. A very recent example for me is that I was traveling to Morocco, and I traveled with my mother, who still likes to use a travel agent. That's great, and she very much is connected to that world, and so she chose to work with a company called Heritage Travel, who is an office out of the Chicago area, and they are owned by Virtuoso. What was really interesting in the itinerary, and I had not seen this before, is that they basically put in the bottom of the itinerary, in these places in Morocco, this is where we donate to these nonprofits. And these are the organizations we support. And they were to those local nonprofits in Morocco, in country, in the area that you're visiting, so that we actually made a point to look for references to that nonprofit when we were in the country, to really kind of see what the benefits were of that support. So I think that that's very real, and I think that it's great to be transparent about that and share that with your clients. So, and I think Paul will get into this a little bit more, but operationalizing sustainability, so getting away from what's consumer facing and getting back into how you're just running your shop. It's really important, and as sustainability advances, that, again, the transparency piece is the best way to explain it, but that you're taking care of your house, that your house is in order, whatever business you're operating, and that you're able to operationalize and really put together the aspects of sustainability that not only build efficiency, but also help you with your storytelling. They give you the data points for whether it be energy conservation to dollars committed to your community, so that you can share that information not only with your employees, your internal guests, which are going to be your best marketing avenue, but also the clients that you're trying to attract and the clients that you're already working with. And crummy compact fluorescent lights that make everybody look really washed out when they're looking at the vanity in the bathroom. Shower heads are improved so that you can have a high efficiency, low flow shower head and not have to run around in the shower to get wet. All of those things have kind of caught up, as well as other consumables and disposable products, so that you don't have to compromise experience, and you can still make a solid commitment to sustainability. And I've talked quite a bit already and used the word transparency and verification several times. But what you're starting to see, and you see this in everything from the Unilevers and the McDonald's of the world to, larger hotel brands like Marriott, Wyndham, Intercontinental Hotels, and certainly with Delta, where they are benchmarking and they're talking about their measurement and their metrics. They're putting it out there for the public to see and also criticize. Hopefully most of the public is celebrating the fact that people are putting their information out there, and they're integrating it into whatever reporting that they're doing, whether it's sustainability-driven global reporting initiative work, or just their general annual reports. There is a weave of sustainability metrics, which is really, really important, again, to show that this is just the way organizations are starting to do their business. There is a partnership as a specific example with the World Tourism and Travel Council and the International Tourism Partnership on what is called the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative. And the World Tourism and Travel Council has the top 100 hotel brands that got together and supported a carbon measurement initiative where they start benchmarking in a unified form and start to figure out ways to communicate with their partners and their clients how they're looking at their operations relative to carbon impact. And they've done some recent updates, and it's really starting to develop some really good steam around this. And it's important, again, from a communication education perspective, that these large players that control a lot of the bed base globally are speaking the same language. You also are seeing more and more partnerships for credibility. Starwood International partners with Conservation International, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line works with Sustainable Travel International, as well as several other organizations. And they're continuing to open themselves up and realize the true scale and the true benefit is really influencing their supply chain and bringing in other partners that are like-minded that can really, influence technology, influence manufacturing, and all these various things along all points of the supply chain, both globally and as well down to community and destination levels. The other thing that's really helpful too is that more and more of the vertical publications and other organizations are recognizing leaders. Condé Nast Traveler has done their World Savers program for several years. Travel and Leisure mirrors that as well. And then the World Travel and Tourism Council has a very, very competitive sustainability awards program called Tourism for Tomorrow that is audited and verified and very, very competitive. And these are all great programs to really call out leaders and really raise the bar on globally how we look at travel and tourism and sustainability. And then specific to more where all of you live is one of the leaders in the accommodation sector for certification is Green Key Canada or Green Key Global. And they have many, many of your partners, I'm sure, in the work that you do in their program. And they are continuing to look at how they evolve their program to meet some of these global emerging standards and integrate and partner with other organizations to really offer, that stamp of approval and really make it easier for people to see the, who is and who isn't doing really good work in sustainability. So not to offend anyone by leaving anyone off the list, but certainly this is from my experience, some of the leaders in the sustainability space. And I feel like early on there were a couple of leaders. I think that there are people kind of looking to capture that space from a marketing communications perspective, and in different areas, some of these brands are finding their niche. I do think that some of the smaller boutique brands like Delta, like Fairmont, Kimpton, and Starwood are doing some of the best work. Partially, it might be because they have more control of their portfolio. Hard to say. And internationally, the brands that are internationally based in Asia and other areas of the world are also, some of the early adopters and early leaders. And again, as you can see from some of the emerging leaders, there's other folks in the supply chain, not just the accommodation sector, that are really stepping up and integrating sustainability. So real quickly, sharing the story. It's really important as sustainability evolves, and I think, again, all of you play a huge role in this, is the touch point to the story, not only making sure your providers and partners are integrating into operations and really walking the talk and engaging on a execution level, but that you figure out a way to weave it into how you're selling and moving your partners and your product line into the consumer environment. And a way that a lot of the operations are doing that, a lot of the operators, hotels, airlines, and so on and so forth, are building off of what would be more of a basic sustainability policy and really looking at envisioning and looking at integrated decision-making, what can differentiate them, because again, there's a lot happening in the last 5 years with everyone getting into this space, and they need to be looking at visioning beyond. It has to be more than the flavor of the day. They have to be looking at aspirational decision making. They have to be looking at complete stakeholder engagement and really giving visitors a chance to engage and clients a chance to engage, and certainly their employees. So just a quick laundry list, both from internal and external, about some of the things that, from an operational perspective, a sustainability strategy. And these are some marketing, communication, and engagement points. And these are the same ones that you would be using ideally for recruitment, for any other things that you would want to be talking about. So again, it's really utilizing the tools and resources that you already have and integrating sustainability. Externally, the same thing. As I mentioned, booking engines, social media, community engagement, special events, those are all opportunities to integrate sustainability and, again, make it seamless to the experience. And I just was going to call up one example. Actually, when I was working at Rock Resorts, I'd say we did a program that kind of preempted this called Give and Getaway, but this model is obviously much larger because the Rock Resorts portfolio was only about 14 properties at its largest. And this is a great way where employees are engaging side by side with guests on community engagement. And they won a World Savers Award for it in 2012. So they not only were doing good work that benefited in any number of areas in sustainability, world hunger, disadvantaged children, environmental conservation, but they also integrated employees and guests. And I know from the experiences I had at Rock Resorts, guests love to be working alongside employees. I mean, I think that's pretty neat. And this was just a little bit of an example of how they put the communication out there about when you're visiting to their various resorts, what the local project was. So lots of, just a very simple example of how they're engaging and getting at the property level, engagement at the community level, and really, doing something that's unique to that destination. So that is a kind of an overview of some of the work that I've done, and just kind of my perspective from, backing up from not only the market advantage of branding and integrating sustainability, but also just as you kind of are starting to kind of look through what makes an organization really solid at their sustainability commitments, and how trends and resources are really starting to help you as providers and as linkages to the traveling public in verifying, who's doing the best work. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. Your presentation, I really looked at all the trends and the expectations and the leaders in the field and how to engage clients internally and externally. And I know it'll provide all of us with really practical ideas regarding what to do and what to look for in an organization's sustainability story. And there were a couple of questions. We'll get to them after Paul. And I also wanted to mention, I know you're talking about awards, Julie, and I want everyone to remember that we have our own awards here at rttf.ca, so please go to the website and nominate the people that you think are doing great work in this area. Now, Paul from Delta Hotels will tell us about Delta's sustainability story. Delta Hotels has come so far, in a large part, I think, to people like Paul, and is truly a leader in the Canadian sustainability landscape. So welcome, Paul. I'll let you have the mic now.
Thanks very much. It's interesting to hear Julie talk because, and the sequence of the presentations this afternoon is obviously there was method to the madness, but very well orchestrated from a continuity perspective, because Julie was able to give us the trends, and as she was and the insight at a macro level, not brand related specifically. And now I'm going to be able to give you the insight in what we're doing in our brand in this area. And it was interesting as I was looking at her slides and going, yep, we're doing that, and that makes sense. So Julie, lots of collaboration on this without having met you before. So thanks for the lead, and your check is in the mail. At Delta, we are all guests of the environment. Definitely our lead in as we approached this topic well over 5 years ago, and it's been a journey for us for sure. It's something that you're continually working on, and you're starting somewhere, and I think that's what is important to note, is that as you start to get into some sort of a mammoth project like this, there were at times in the beginnings where we just felt like we were at the bottom of the mountain, and still I feel that sometimes, because I just bang my head against a wall to sort of, are we making progress yet? Are we? But as I stand back and look and put together presentations like this, I sort of can proudly say that we're on a journey and we're on it, which is I think one of the very first steps. So this is really about turning words into actions and telling the Delta story. A little bit about the brand. Delta, all-Canadian hotel management company. We have 42 hotels from coast to coast. Are currently right now in the development of 4 new hotels. One is our flagship hotel, which is being built in downtown Toronto, the Delta Toronto at Southcore Financial, which is just beside the new Ripley's Aquarium down in the emerging south part of the city. Our Delta Waterloo, which is a brand new property, will open in April and May of next year. And then we've got Thunder Bay and Prince George, which are all new builds as well. So a lot of excitement going on here within our company as we continue to grow. Our objective really with this program going into it, and I think we all need to have a goal, and especially when you're going out to your team members, I mean, the thing that is the challenge as well as the opportunity with a program as broad-based as Greens and environmental sustainability is, how do you touch all 8,500 employees across the brand with various different levels of commitment and buy-in. And that commitment and buy-in can be everywhere from the general manager right down to the room attendant, because everybody has to understand and has to want to be part of this initiative, as opposed to it just being a corporate mandate. Those are not really the best executed programs in my experience of having been in the business, although sometimes we have no other choice but to do those. So our brand positioning was to become the leader in environmental sustainability in the Canadian hospitality industry. And it was really more to go out to our employees to say, if we're going to do this, folks, we want to be the best at what we're doing. And that really is going to require your input and your commitment to be able to get us there and to be able to do that. And I think in that objective, and Julie had indicated in her presentation, we're really not looking at this as a program per se, but as a way of doing business. And as the program starts to mature into its 5th year, I can start to see some signs where we're actually saying, we're just doing this. We don't know any other way. And a good example of that is, I remember we beta tested, this is in the early stages of the program, we had a green meetings package that we were selling to customers, and we weren't really getting much of an uptake on it. And it was things like where we were doing different types of pads of paper on the desks in the meeting room. We were not using bottled water, we were using recycled water, and a couple of other things as well. And essentially the feedback was, no, there was really no uptake, because in those early days it was like, well, shouldn't you just really be doing this already? Like, shouldn't you be incorporating this into your overall business practices? So clearly that's one of the things that has been our message, is the fact that sustainability just needs to be a way of doing business, and that's how you need to incorporate it into your operation. The journey so far, and I just really want to take you through some of the very high-level steps that we've done from 2008 to 2013. The program began with a commitment from the very, very senior level, the CEO, in conjunction with ownership, that environmental management was a priority, and that we needed to start putting together a national sustainability program. We're in the hotel business. We're not really in the environmental management business per se from an expertise perspective. So we engaged external resources to help us out with this. We used a company called Loop Initiatives. Loop is a division of HALSOL, which is a significant building and construction organization which consults on many different types of projects, and they have a sustainability practice which was able to guide us along in developing a corporate strategy. So we were in the lab with them, and part of their due diligence to help us out was to be able to find out what we're currently doing right now. And we had a lot of examples as we went across the country where we had hotels that were doing certain things, great initiatives with a lot of good things happening out west, something happening in the mid part of the country, and other things going on out east. But what we really wanted to do was to put together a baseline program that we could say we're all doing, so that we could be able to go out and talk to this to say that this is happening at all Delta locations. And we had some hotels that were doing nothing, so it wasn't a rosy story as we did that research. When we actually launched the program, we did a cross-country roadshow, typically when we're doing something that's national in scope. We visited Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax, and we bring our hotels in. And we brought them in for 3 days, and we brought in our general managers, 3 people from every hotel, our general managers, our chief engineers, and then another, what we would call green champion from each hotel. We let each hotel's general manager say, there must be someone in your hotel, and we know that these people exist, that are really passionate about this. And they're the tree huggers. They're the ones that make sure that you're throwing the pop can in the right recycling container. So we went out to all of those cities and hosted all of our teams from within that region to launch the program. We also took a gentleman from Loop Initiatives with us. We called him our Al Gore, because part of what we were doing with this program, and to be able to make it, to lay the foundation for the long run, was we had to provide our teams education. And again, we felt that there was great value in having someone externally come along and add a level of importance to this topic who is third party. Someone, to have me up in front of the room saying why we should do this is not quite as credible as you've got the guy who's the head of sustainability for a consulting company talking to you about, the tipping point of temperature and how the earth is warming up, or, how we're starting to see climate change and what impact that's having on food or even diseases and that type of thing. So it was a little bit of the shock factor to be able to basically have everyone listen up, and essentially that this is a world issue, and the brand that you work for, Delta Hotels, is doing something about this. It was a very successful approach in doing it that way, and a lot of credibility to the program. Subsequently, we've launched a sustainable purchasing policy. I know Julie talked about supply chain, so we have actually awarded, we had our first award that went out to Bell Canada, PepsiCo, and Brown Book Company with our Sustainable Purchasing Award. And these are organizations that on a score chart scored the best for adopting to sustainable purchasing practices. We also have an environmental policy as well. So these are published policies that are posted back of house that the hotels are to adhere to. On the certification side of things, we became the first brand to have all hotels certified with the Green Key meetings, and Green Key was part of what Julie talked about, Green Key Global. Our hotels are certified as well, so we certified the meetings component as well as certifying the hotel. And then we have won a couple awards along the way. The first was the Green Leadership Award, which is sponsored by Fairmont Hotels and Hotelier Magazine here in Canada. And what was interesting about that process was to be able to have an external validation team look at our look at our submission and give us feedback on how we thought we were doing. So this was really a peer feedback session to be able to say, you know what, this is what we like about yours, this is where we would give you some suggestions. And of course, I wouldn't be honest if I with all of you to be able to say it was exciting to receive an award from Fairmont, the little competitive spirit that we all have in us. We also have won the Green 30 Award, which was from Hewitt & Associates. So again, that speaks to as part of our employee engagement survey. So now a little bit more into bringing you into the meat of the program. Really, Greens has 3 stakeholders: guests, owners, and our team members or our colleagues. And this was really, in launching this program, was about building a culture of sustainability and focusing on 2 areas. One is the behavioral changes that our employees were going to have to, we wanted them to adapt to, as well as the capital investment that was going to happen through the things like window replacement or boiler replacement or any sort of heavy equipment type of thing. So clearly one is both have impact. One is low impact on the financial standpoint to be able to change behavior, and one is higher impact on the capital side, which involves investing money into the building. So as I just take each one of these at a very high level, we talk about, from an employee perspective, it certainly was all about that we know through just our own company data and from visiting our hotels that our Delta employees want to contribute and grow, and so this very much aligned with our values. It came out as we did that roadshow that conversations about sustainability are happening at the dining room table. Children, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, your kids are talking to you about, why you're not doing something that's not overly green, or why are we having bottled water at home when there's nothing wrong with what comes out of the tap. So again, it was something that was very near and dear to their hearts. It is a universal concern for sure, and this was the first time I personally have gone out with a program that was not related to being brand specific. So as much as it was a framework that we were providing, this was not talking about how we were going to make up the beds or how we were going to design the room. This was something that had just as much impact on what people were doing in their personal lives as what they were doing at work, and perhaps that's why we had such great engagement by the employees as they went through the sessions. And I think we would be remiss without saying that certainly the new generation of worker today, the new demographic that's coming up, and I'm always amazed when I interview folks when they actually ask me about the program, because it's important to them. It's important to the new worker to know what your company is doing in this area for that group. From a customer perspective, it certainly positions us as a brand that cares. There is a financial side to it too, which is really you've got a lot of our corporate customers are basing RFP decisions on what are your environmental considerations, and they want to know what you're doing. So on that note, it certainly makes good business sense. And it was also noted that Julie had talked about this notion of letting the guest have the choice on their terms. It's this notion of convenience versus conservation, and the fact that not everybody wants to take part in your program. So we still have to remember that we're in hospitality. That's our core business, and that we need to recognize that we will have those that do participate, and in some cases we're just rolling things in operationally so that the guest doesn't necessarily experience it, and in other cases we feel that we have to give them the option. Our experience has been that wherever you provide the education to the customer, that they're more apt to do it. By not having bottled water in your meeting, you are saving this. And a lot of people like to tell the story. They like to tell, if they're having a carbon neutral meeting, just exactly how it was impacted and what did we do to get there. And last but not least is the program is fully transparent. All results are posted, and I would invite all of you to go to look at this, deltahotels.com/greens. As we look into community involvement, it goes without saying that the community plays a big role in this. A lot of our employees are very aligned to what we're doing in our community, so this really just, again, made sense for us to be able to go down this road. I won't spend a lot of time on our targets, but we did talk about measurement, and Julie talked about the importance of that. We measure it. It's all on the website. And as you can see, we set 2012 and 2015 targets. The red is what we didn't achieve. The green is what we did achieve. So we've got a fair smattering of green, which is good, and a couple reds, a couple things for us to be working on as we get into what did we do to impact energy consumption. A lot of the things were those behavioral items, the switch-off program, making sure that when we were leaving offices and meeting rooms that there just was a culture of turning things off, turning off your computers. Certainly as we started to get into some capital retrofits, things like window replacements and changing out some of that bigger equipment has helped us along as well, but as you can see, we're still quite not there yet. As we look on the waste, which actually we did meet our targets, significant amount of improvement here through guest room recycling, some hotels doing organic recycling, and just really a whole spirit of making sure that we're handling our waste properly, and even in working with our suppliers to be able to minimize packaging and that sort of thing. So lots of good achievement there. So now we're working on our 2015 targets to make sure we get those. What does achieving the targets mean for Delta? Well, I think it's good for the planet. We're reducing. And we're enhancing our positioning with our customers. We are becoming an industry leader, and we're leading. I can't tell you how many opportunities that people want to know about our program, and we are fully transparent with it. I'm happy to talk about what we're doing because this really is an issue for our Earth, and anything that we can do to bring others along is going to be good for all of us and for our children. The integrated rating indicator for sustainability, say that fast a few times, the IRIS as we call it, when you go online, you'll be able to see the transparency of the program, and this is what you'll see. And I invite you to go into each one of those indicators, and it shows you what our results are, and it shows you what are the initiatives that we're doing to be able to achieve those. As you can see, the more green that we have, the closer that we are to the target. I just threw in a couple of extra slides here with regards to Green Link, and this is our internal employee portal where we share ideas. And as you can see down the left-hand side there, we have daily process ideas, which are by different departments in the hotel, but we also have ideas that are shared right across the company and are also voted on by different folks who say that's a great idea and we're going to adopt that. So this is part of the ongoing communication for the program. And things like this back of house, the green space, which every hotel has, which posts all of their results, posts all of their activities, and just draws attention to the program in the hotel. This is probably one of my more interesting slides here, not that the rest of it wasn't, but just the final thoughts in terms of what I'm noticing or what we're noticing are some of the trends. And again, a lot of similarities to what was spoken about. Hospitality and travel focuses to continue on it with various level of commitments. We certainly see that happening from the brands. It becomes a little bit more challenging sometimes for the independent, but we do see some things happening in that area as well. Corporate Canada continues to make it a priority, and when we look at the different types of organizations, pension funds versus publicly traded organizations versus private, certainly the pension funds have made it a priority. There is very much a responsible environmental culture among the pension funds. The publicly traded companies, and I sort of put these in this order, the publicly traded, it certainly is in effect as well, but perhaps not as much as it is on the pension side. And then on the private side, it becomes a challenge sometimes just because of resources and getting things started. Canada is not leading on the world stage with regards to emissions. We just had some very timely information that came out that said that we will not make our 2015 targets in that area. Sustainability is still very regional as we went across the country, and nothing hits home more than to take garbage that comes out of a guest room, put it on a sheet of plastic paper in a meeting room with your employees, and have the different types of bins that they are able to recycle with, and have them put the proper garbage in the proper bin. And when you find it, well, no, our municipality doesn't do it that way, or they don't take this, and there's still a lot going into landfill, unfortunately. Talked about this already, which is travelers like their comfort, but they do want to contribute, so this is the whole idea of on their terms, convenience versus conservation. But education plays a big role in that. And then sustainability does not equal recycling. It's gone beyond that. It's gone beyond the beehive on the rooftop with the picture of the chef. It really is an integrated approach into a way of doing business that's touching everything that you do and asking yourself that question, is there another way? And I guess last but not least, and probably the most important, it's not easy. it's not an easy way to go green. It takes work and commitment. It's not always cheap or inexpensive, but it absolutely is the right thing to do as we move forward. And we've got to be showing ourselves that we're starting to move forward in this area. So I went a couple minutes over, but that's my show.
Oh, that was fantastic, Paul. Thank you very much. So
I'm a talker, so it's hard for me to consolidate.
I know. It was lovely, though. I appreciate it. So and your program is such an inspiring one, or I know it's not a program. The Delta Greens is an inspiring story, and I'm thrilled, honestly, that a Canadian company is taking on initiatives like this. It's great for everybody, and I love the use of benchmarking. I think it's really important. It adds a reality, to check mark to an idea that I think is seen as intangible to other people if they're not really involved in sustainability. And what I'm going to talk about right now, the picture that's up there, or the website that's up there, I did promise a toolkit for our participants, and I know Raquel sort of asked a question about it. She was asking Paul later on about what can smaller companies do. This might be something for you, Raquel. It's a free toolkit, and it's available at that website I have right there. If you've been inspired by Julie and Paul and you want to know what you can do today to start your own sustainability story, this might be the place for you to start. It is a Canadian document. It's a few years old, but it's very practical and useful, and I just wanted to share it with you. I've been in contact with the author, who's Ruth Marr, and she's happy to share their work and welcomes feedback. So if you go to that website, you'll see the webkit, or the toolkit. Now, what is the toolkit? Well, there's a fuzzy screenshot of it, but it's a 107-page toolkit, and I know that is a lot, and before you panic and think, oh, I'll never have time to do 107 pages, it's like Paul said, it does take time, but this guide is broken down into many, many sections. So you can do it over time. It doesn't have to be done right away. So no matter what type of business you are, too, this toolkit addresses it. So if you're an accommodation, a travel agency, a tour operator, there's very specific suggestions and research just for you. And then it further breaks down all the tasks that need to be carried out into bite-sized processes. So if you want to look at one area of your organization in the next couple of months, you can choose or pick from several processes that are talked about in the toolkit, like product development if you want to start new products, or training and education for your employees, or purchasing. If fair purchasing is a passion for you, you can jump right to a page like that. Fair purchasing is on page 52, for example. Or if you want to go more for the hard results so you can prove, I guess, that these initiatives are working, you can go to the tools by need area of the manual, and there you'll find suggestions for segments such as energy, waste, and transportation. So I think what all of this is that there is a free resource there. I encourage you to go look at it. Remember, baselines are key, so you can measure any changes from your initiatives. And by the end of this week, you can look at this toolkit, and you can have your own green sustainability story up and started. I mean, there's this when it's free. I mean, Julie helps you. There's lots of resources out there. So I just want to encourage people to think that, it's not just the big companies and it's not just an idea. You can put what we're talking about today in action. And so now that we've shown you that you can align your sustainable beliefs and go beyond recycling, I'd like to open up the floor to the questions for our expert speakers. They're here. They're great resources. So let's get lots and lots of questions in. I'm going to start, I think, Julie. I have, there was one way back then for, it said, can you recommend any certification programs? I think you were talking about, I can't remember one of your slides, but yeah, if you have any certification programs that you found to be very useful, maybe you can speak to that.
So thank you for the question. There's a couple of different ways to look at it, but I think, and similar to the comment that I made when I was presenting, is that whatever industry you're looking at, there's lots of certifications out there, and it's hard from the operator's perspective to kind of cut through the noise and figure out what's the best of the best, knowing that there's a lot of work to pursue certification. You don't want to pursue something and then later to find out in the not too distant future that this isn't the best standard to be pursuing. So in the travel and tourism industry, the UN World Tourism Organization convened the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and through a multi-year process with lots and lots of engagement from all sectors of travel and tourism, they developed what's called the Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria. And that criteria is the industry's best effort to standardize measurements and what categorizes as good verification or good certification. And so to keep it fairly neutral, I think the best effort is to look at programs that meet the criteria as designated by what's called the DSCC. I think that that's a great first start. And there are several out there. Some are country-specific. Many of them are more general and international based, like Sustainable Travel International's Sustainable Tourism Education or Eco-Certification Program. I think that that's a great place to start. With that said, Green Key Global is also a great program that's accommodation-based, but they're focused mostly on environmental, so I'm not sure that they're going to go for the criteria, but they're still widely accepted, and there's definitely some good rigors to that standard.
Yeah, and we've actually, our first webinar, if anyone's listening didn't participate in, our first webinar was on certification, and so we did mention that GTA Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria as well. So it is, I think it's a theme that's coming up again and again. It's great to hear you validate it as well, Julie, so that might be a great place for Cal for you to look for the certification programs. She was mentioning that it is G Adventures. I'm not sure, Carla, maybe you can write to us again what, I'm assuming it was on a slide, but Carla, if you can let me know about that, I can follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is how they get what their name is now.
Okay.
So, but they're more widely known as Gap Adventures. So.
Yeah, and actually I know the owner and founder of that just released a book about all of his how he started the company G Adventures and all the good things he's doing. So if anyone's interested, there's a new book out by him. So let's get to some other questions. Now we had one for, I'm not sure you'll know about this, Julie, but we were wondering about agritourism destinations around Toronto, and I don't know how familiar you are with Toronto because you are in Colorado, but do you know any agritourism destinations or okay?
I don't, but I think, Paul mentioned some of that type of work in what Delta's trying to do at a local level with their hotels. I think probably needs more research, and maybe there's somebody else on the in the call or in your collective.
Yeah, that's right. If anybody, one of our participants knows, and I would suggest myself, if you're interested, the folks at Tourism Ontario are really good. They have so much knowledge, local knowledge. So, Janek, I would probably say just go to the Tourism Ontario website and, or even Tourism Toronto and ask about that. But if anyone knows anybody on the call, please type it in. That would be great. So. And then, Raquel, I'm going to pass your question to Paul. I do think you should check out that toolkit from that Ruth Marr wrote. But Paul, do you have any suggestions what smaller companies with fewer resources can do to implement green policies and initiatives? And then she goes on to ask, how can we effectively communicate our green policies to our clients?
Well, I think it all really starts with, and again, one of the things that we did was we posted our environmental policy right on our website. So feel free to go and look at ours. And I think, a lot of, as we looked at different policies, it all starts about what are the areas that you want to impact? And I think then in a combination with the toolkit that was suggested and that in conjunction with setting some sort of a policy up in terms of what you want to do, and again, depending on how large your operation is, the big thing is it doesn't have to be you got to start somewhere, and quite often it's a matter of just setting up, and for a large company, we started simple. We divided our standards up into 4 categories, and 4 being, and they were all sort of by impact, but also by cost to implement. And, the first 2 levels were all about behavioral changes. I think the other thing that's important is also to be able to waste disposal bill or whatever to be able to see what you're being charged and what your consumption has been. That's been a big thing for our hotels. That's a bit more of a hotel application, but I'd start with the policy, and the policy really outlines the initiatives that you want to cover off, and then you start adapting those to your business model.
Okay. And who would set, this is just my own little question, who sets those goals, Paul? Is it like you, or is it the team?
No, what we did in order to set our goals, we used 2008 consumption data from the hotels as the baseline year, And working with Loop and working with our hotels, we set objectives, we set targets based on those. And those targets have not changed since 2009. In looking back, obviously you want to make sure that you're setting things that are achievable. But quite honestly, in those beginning years, we were, it was hopeful in terms of what we would achieve. So the reality test of is just coming in now in terms of was that were we conservative, were we too aggressive? So as you can see in some areas, I mean, the other thing that comes up on energy, which we're just into looking at now, energy consumption, is this whole notion of weather and how does weather come into it and how do you actually normalize temperature swings, hot summers, cold winters in different parts of the country. So that's what we're starting to work on.
I can see that, yeah. And I know it's 2 o'clock, but we still have some questions. I'm just going to make sure we get them all. Thank you, Julie, for answering the question from Christine. And Meghna, I have that toolkit was on one of the slides. I will get the guys from Baxter there in the back end to send that out, again, that link, so we'll get it out to all the participants. And I think I had a couple more questions, but I was just really wondering, I know we need to end, but I was wondering about the monetary aspect, either Paul or Julie. You mentioned that it can be expensive to implement. If somebody was going to do this in their office and they're smaller, like, is there an average budget, time, and money that they can think about, or is it so specific to the business that you can't possibly answer that? I know.
Do you want, Julie,
yeah,
do you want to attack it, or do you want me to?
I mean, I think we both can. I think Delta is part of a much larger collection of, obviously, other companies, but I think there are several ways that organizations can kind of dip their toe in and get going with this. I think the biggest thing is, starting with champions within your organization that are intimate with the operations and can certainly kind of help establish your culture. And then as you're looking at trying to, integrate sustainability, make sure that ownership or leadership is committed to support you. And I think there's a lot of ways to start. I mean, you can start with a pretty simple green team where you're looking at making sure you have the basics in place, like recycling programs and paper reduction programs and things like that. And all those things help build momentum. I mean, that's how all this stuff starts. And all of those things cost very little to no money to start. And then I think I mentioned, and I had in a couple of my slides, which I know they'll share out, is, use your normal communication channels and just continue to look at ways, like if you have an employee newsletter or, certainly have a website, a little call out of things that you're doing that just show that you're integrating it. I mean, I think, again, there are some people that are doing some pretty shiny stuff and some pretty big picture stuff, but there's also a lot of companies that are just kind of starting the journey. And there's just a lot of ways to, to start to communicate and integrate, and all of it's important, and all of it.
But it is time to wrap it up. I don't believe we have any more questions from the audience, so it's probably a good time. I do want to remind everybody to sign up for the next webinar, which is November 6th, a week today. It's on risk, and you can sign up on the website. I want to thank our series sponsors, Air Canada, Eaton Chelsea, Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson, and of course Baxter Travel Media, and our speakers, Julie and Paul. You did a fabulous job. Thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing your knowledge today. And of course,